How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to The Big Thing. It's our Tuesday episode, and as you saw on the thumbnail, you guys, if you've been following me long enough, you know how much of a Sopranos fan I am. I love that show. It's one of my favorite shows of all time, so I was really excited with the opportunity to speak to Robert Iler, who of course played Aj Soprano on the show. We talk about a lot of things, man. We talk about a lot of things. We talk about his time on the show. We talk about his podcast. We talk about, he's really open about his sobriety. He talks about his, if there was ever a romantic link with his co-host, Jamie Lynn Sigler. Talk about some of his clips with Drea de Matteo that was put out there, which is hilarious. Talks about some of the guests he's had on his podcast. It's a full-on conversation, and the guy's great. He's just a regular, normal dude. It was so refreshing to just have, like, this is the first kind of New York guest I've had in my studio since I've set it up. Since I set this studio up all by myself with no help. Painted the walls myself while I was podcasting, while I did it all by my lonesome. This is the first guest that we've had in studio to sit down and have a conversation. So it's going to be one of those ones I remember, but also remember because I really enjoyed talking to this dude. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere podcasts are found, make sure you subscribe to it. You can now comment on YouTube videos or Spotify videos. Now on YouTube videos, I just figured out a way to do it. But on Spotify videos, you can do it. And if you're brand new to this and you just found us, subscribe to the channel, man. We're trying to get to 200,000 subscribers this year. I think we can do it, but we need you guys to hit that button. All right. So let's get into it, man. Here is my interview with Robert Iler. Let's get to it. All right. I'm excited for my next guest, guys, and for so many different reasons. And even when you guys, I told you guys I was doing a heavy push on guests this year, and my next guest was suggesting. They said, "Well, do you happen to be a Sopranos fan?" I said, "What?" Like, I literally have a picture of Tony as Napoleon, the pie on in the back. And Robert Iler's here. He is going to be doing stuff in New York, talking about the 25-year anniversary of The Sopranos. And I said, yes, get him here. And he was so kind to come in studio. So we're going to be talking to Robert about, obviously, his time on The Sopranos, but he also has a great podcast, Not Today, Pal, with Jamie Lynn Sigler, and we'll talk to him about that and just other things that I'd love to discuss with him. Please welcome to the show today my guest, Robert Iler. Hello, Robert. How are you?
Great, man. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad that you're here, man, because there was so much that I'd love to talk to you about, obviously, and I think that one of the things I really actually love about you is how honest you are about a lot of different things. Your time there, the fact that it's hard for you to watch yourself in general, hard for you to watch the show because of your relationship with Jim Gandolfini and all that.
Yeah.
But I just like how kind of open and honest you've been about a lot of different things. But the first thing I want to get into is the podcast.
Yeah.
Because you weren't doing interviews for a long time.
No, I went... when I was like 22, we finished Sopranos, and I kind of told my manager, like, leave me alone for a long time. Yeah, I just want to go. I just want to hang, because I started acting when I was 6. I didn't get Sopranos till I was 12. But I started acting when I was 6, and I think I was sick and tired of people telling me where to go, where to sit, how to cut my hair, what to eat, how to, everything. And I was like, I just want to do my own thing. So from 22 to 26, I didn't even speak to like my manager. I was just like, I'm done. Yeah. I'm out of here. I want to hang and and then I went to Vegas for like 2 weeks, and I ended up staying for almost 2 years.
Wow, yeah. That's like 10 years.
Right, exactly. And I was just partying, and I got it all out of my system. Now I've been sober for like 11 years or something. But I feel like it was a great thing that I just got that all out of my system.
Yeah.
I had a lot of pent up things I wanted to do. When you start working at 6 and you're missing all these things, and everybody, we're going over to this person's house, we're having a birthday party. And again, not to like, Sopranos was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I wouldn't change it for the world. But there's just, you have that mental thing as a kid where you're like, I want to do, when I was 14, I didn't really want to be you know, maybe at some kind of function with all these people and people shaking your hands. I wanted to be hanging out with my friends.
I wanted to be a kid.
Yeah, I wanted to be a kid. You know? Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the thing where as you walked in, we were talking about New York a little bit and just growing up and how I had mentioned, because you noticed the poster when you came in, or the painting rather, when you came in, and we were talking about things that you did when you were a kid on the show that you don't even really remember, because I don't remember shit that happened to me like 2 years ago. And you're like 12 years old when you got. I didn't realize that you were 12 because it took a while for the pilot actually to get picked up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me about that. What do you remember about actually getting the role?
So I remember I was in school, and it was one of those things where like they called you down to the principal's office. It was like, come down to, and my mom was on the phone, and she was like, "You got a TV show."
Okay.
And we went through all the emotions, because at first it was kind of like, you got a TV show, but it's on HBO, and HBO wasn't really big on TV shows at the time.
Right. You know? Yeah, they didn't even have. Yeah, Sex and the City came after you guys, right?
I think Sex and the City maybe was like, because if, you know, like you said, we filmed the pilot in like, damn, what year was it?
Had to have been 97, right? 96, 97.
97. Yeah. So I don't know what year Sex and the City came out, but even if it came out, it was maybe first season, but not, you know, it just wasn't a thing where it was like, oh, we're really. But then, well, you know, over a couple of weeks went by, and it was like, no, you're on a TV show. You're gonna be rich, you know. And then, like, this is it.
Right.
And then I remember going to set, and Tony Sirocco, who played Paulie Walnuts, was like, no, we do this shit all the time. Like, you're not going to be rich. We're never going to see each other again. Like, this is a one and done, just like all the other ones we've done. And, you know, maybe we'll see each other at auditions or whatever. So now I have to go back and tell my family, like, you know, no, this isn't it. You know?
He's telling you at 12 years old, he's like, tough shit, kid. You ain't going to get this.
Oh, he had zero filter ever. He talks to a 12-year-old the same way he talks to an 80-year-old. Like, you know, a lot of times people say, I wish I got to meet James Gandolfini.
Yeah. And
I say, you know, you would have loved him. He was amazing. And people say, I wish I got to meet Tony Sirocco. I go, you did. That's Tony Sirocco. Like, 100%. Right. That is exactly Tony Sirocco. Tony. There are things in the script that came from, because that's how he is. Like, he was that guy. Like, he's amazing.
It's amazing. So he was telling you, you're not going to get this thing. It happens all the time, kid. Harsh reality. Here it is. And then that's your mentality as a 12-year-old. Go back to your parents going, I don't think we're going to get this thing.
Yeah, I was like, no, we're going to do one episode of this, and then we'll never hear about it ever again.
Yeah.
So that's what I thought would happen. So now I was like, oh, I didn't get to go to summer camp because I was doing this stupid thing that, you know, we'll never hear about ever again.
And which is crazy about it too, because as I heard you, and I mentioned to you beforehand that you say you don't watch a lot of the stuff, and I probably equally, because when you're that age. And what the show was dealing with, I don't know, maybe parents are also like, we don't want you watching that shit. That's part one. And also, I think that David Chase would probably be like, I don't want them to see this, because you don't get to see that side of James when he's doing that. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I never watched the show for a million reasons. You know, I mean, I was 12, 13, 14. I wanted to, whenever I wasn't working, I was like, I want to go hang out. I want to be with my friends. You know, I wasn't, but I know there's a lot of people who don't watch the stuff they're in, because even when I'm older, I don't like to watch the stuff I'm in, because you have the memory of it when it happens, and if that's a good memory, watching it sometimes changes it, and it makes it bad, because you're like, oh, they used, like, even my allergies have been killing me since I got to New York, and now even if I heard this podcast tomorrow, I'd be like, this, how are people listening? You know, like, I just apologize. I'm so sorry that you had to hear, and you know, but I actually did like that people hated AJ. You know what I mean? Like, I liked that AJ annoyed people so much.
Right. Not in the beginning, though. In the beginning, though, he was just like, I still to this day, who's letting off big ones to this day. So, but he's just a normal kid. But it's like you see, and especially now I have two kids, so you see like anxiety and getting older, trying to live up to your whether it's your parents, trying to live up to your siblings, like. There's a lot that AJ was kind of burdened with. So, like, the way that he dealt with it was so different than what Meadow did, right? So, I think you're supposed to be annoyed with him. I think that was what your job was.
For sure. But it's funny because David Chase, you know, we had him on our podcast recently, and he's like, I don't know why people were annoyed with AJ. He's like,
Really?
He's just, because I think, you know, because I think David puts himself in a lot of characters, you know? So I think when he puts him, you know, a lot of AJ was probably him as a kid, and whatever, and I think he's like, why are people so annoyed with him, you know? And I'm like, because he's fucking ungrateful, you know? He's so ungrateful, you know? A lot of people are like, imagine you got a car for that, and he's like, hey, whatever, you know? He's just upset all the time and this, but yeah, it's David's there's a documentary coming out that we got to see early that HBO did about David.
Okay.
And it kind of ties in like his personal life with the show, and it's really good.
I can't wait to see it. I'm very excited to see it because someone posted the other day, they had Michael Gandolfini on a poster, and it said the new series coming from David Chase, and it was this bullshit thing, but it was like my friend who bought into it says, "Look what's coming." I said, "I wish it was true."
Yeah.
I mean, because did you get a chance did you watch that? Did you see Many Saints?
I forget if I saw the whole thing. I think I did. I did watch it. Yeah, because I was like, oh, this isn't going to be ever. And he's so good. I mean, he's done other stuff. He did there was something I saw that he did called Cherry, like an Apple movie or something. That he was great.
He's very much when I remember watching like a lot of stuff that his dad did and how Jim could just kind of change like a chameleon. Michael's already doing that, which is, I couldn't, because it's not, as you know, it's not a easy order to try to have the energy of what he brought to Tony Soprano. And I believed every second, not just because he was his kid, I believed for every second that was young Tony Soprano because of everything that David had brought to that character throughout all the seasons of the insecurities, the stuff with his mom and understanding. And you can tell that Michael did the work.
Yeah. Did you like the movie?
I liked a lot of it. I do wish that there was more, that there was more of a young Tony story. And I think that's probably where David's like, well, fuck you. That's not the story I was making. But like,
right.
I thought because of what Michael did in that, and there was a couple of things I thought that were a little retcon from the series itself of what happened with Maltasanti and things that are changed. But I got to watch another Soprano story. So it was like, I geeked out. My wife made me sauce and everything too. And I had binged the whole series of Sopranos again, leading into it. So
yeah,
I've now seen it, I think 3 more times than you have.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, it's weird because I'm so, people ask me after I saw it, and what do you think? And I'm like, I'm so biased because just watching it, since I didn't watch the show, just watching it, being put back in that world for the first time in 20 years. Yeah. I was like the warm and fuzzies and the this, and this is a young Paulie Walnuts, and I'm watching it and I'm like, oh my God, and it's reminding you, it's it was just like, I was like, I can't critique this. This would be like asking if your kid is good at, I don't know, his finger paintings, or you're like, he's the best.
He's the best. Well, that's your family.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And I was watching, and I was just like, it was just the warm and fuzzies,
Yeah, and going back to that, so when you get the role. And and as you said, like, you didn't think it's going to get picked up. You don't know. You find out that it does, and it takes a while. Because I remember, and I was listening to Michael Imperialis and Steve. That, by the way, no, it's not that poster, but Steve booked me at the Riviera Comedy Club.
Really?
Back in 2000. I opened for Jimmy Walker.
Wow.
Back in Vegas, yeah, and that was a while ago. But anyway, so Steve,
how long did you do stand up for?
Oh, man, I started in college. That was 96, 97, did some in New York. And then in L.A., became regular at the Comedy Store and the Improv, and really went until 2012. And then I started doing it again about 3-4 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, so that was, but I was listening to that show and listening to how they talked about that the pilot, I think it was like, it was almost like a year before you found out again, or something like that?
I know it was a while before we were like, I don't know how long it was until you found out, but I know it was a while before we were like going, before things were really moving along. But I'd be making it up if I told you how long it was between like, okay, that's a wrap on the pilot, and then getting the call of like they picked up a season. Right. I have no idea.
Right. Again, because you're 13, 14 years old, whatever.
And Tony Sirocco just told me it's over.
Right.
I'm like, all right, that's it. Forget about this thing, and then just go on with my life.
Bill. Hey. Built's the best, man. You want to save some money. I've been telling you guys about Built. It's really great. And I think there's so many people that have been signing up to it because they've been listening to it and paying attention to it. Because this is really, especially for renters. You got to listen up, renters. If you feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, you're just watching that money vanish into thin air, it's time to turn the rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. And that is where Built Rewards comes in. Because people often throw shade on renting. They call it a bad long-term deal. But what if I told you that with Built Rewards, your rent money, it's not just paying the landlord, it's secretly plotting to fund your future home. That's right. Built's got the inside scoop on turning your rent into a legit investment in your home ownership today. All right, so listen, we've been there. Feeling like we're burning cash with those rent checks, it's frustrating. But here's the deal. Built Rewards has figured out a way to make rent more rewarding. You say goodbye to the money bonfire and hello to a renter's revolution with Built. So Built's breaking ground as the first rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. So even if you're rocking the old school rent check vibes, it's got your back. They'll email the check for you. It's like having a personal rent paying assistant. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points run in. So pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. So earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/bigthing. That's joinbuilt.com/bigthing. Make sure to use our URL so they know that we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/bigthing and start earning points with your rent payments today. And I got to tell you about CREMO. That's right, man. So, and I think you guys also have, last week when I was telling you guys about them, I got so many people, I can't even tell you how many people I said, yeah, I use CREMO. I use it so many times. I've been using CREMO, and before you even told me about it, Harloff, I knew it. Because for me, after working in the studio all day, I want to go home and I smell like an alley cat. I want to go home and take a shower and relax. So I love going out on the weekends, but sometimes my friends, they want to visit some really nice places. It means I want to smell nice. My wife and I would go out. I'm like, you don't want to, like I said, she want to go with like a mountain lion who's been sleeping in garbage. She wants to go with someone smelling nice. And that's where CREMO comes in. So you want to elevate and you want to enhance your hygiene routine with CREMO Body Wash. It combines a rich, lathering, and hydrating formula with meticulously balanced, multi-layered fragrances for a superior shower experience. So I used it, we were working in the studio here really late. And so I was like, okay, I used it, felt great right away. So CREMO works with master perfumers to make sure that every body wash scent is blended and refined, and their hard work definitely shows. Every wash that I've tried smells like it's like really high-end cologne. So I really dig it. I like the new Bourbon Vanilla men's body wash, which I've been using. It's really good. Yeah, it's really, really good. So, it gets me clean and it relaxes me after a long day. So check it out. Were you working, because you said you were doing commercials and other things, did you get a job after that? Do you remember?
I don't remember. Okay. I know I did. So I did a bunch of like national commercials. I did like AT&T, Pizza Hut, IBM. I did like I booked like a Saturday Night Live, just like a lot of
What did you do on Saturday Night Live?
I was just in like a skit. There was a skit where there was Rosie O'Donnell was hosting, and it was Whitney Houston was the musical guest.
Holy shit!
Yeah, and they. I guess they were competing over who had the best lawn for Christmas, Okay. So you had to go over and be like, oh my God, look at this one, and oh my God, this one's. And so I did Saturday Night Live, and then I think right around the time, or right before Sopranos, actually, I booked my first movie.
Okay, was what?
Which was called Tick Code.
Okay.
So it was with Gregory Hines and Polly Draper.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it was about Tourette syndrome. It was about a kid who has Tourette syndrome, and I'm the bully, and I just crush this poor kid. Right. And then I did another movie with that director shortly after that. But yeah, I mean, even in my head, like, I only think about those things because like it's on paper. Where really in my head, I'm like, Sopranos is all I've ever.
Yeah, like I mean, how could you not? I mean, and like as you mentioned before, you use the word family, and not for the pun, but for the fact that that's your family and everything that you grew up on it, and that's why. So, and if there's, by the way, if there's anything that I bring up inside this, like, yeah, I've covered it, I don't want to talk about it. Please tell me, because one of the things that as I mentioned to you up top, where I thought you were really honest about, was and you just mentioned it before, how you got sobriety and how you were able to say, okay, I did that, and now it's time for me to get my stuff going, get my life on track. And because there's a lot of people, I talk about it kind of a lot often. I had on, most recently, I had Jamie Campbell Bower on from like Stranger Things, and he's very open about it. Same thing. My brother passed away in 2018. Had some problems with substances and everything.
Sorry, yeah.
I appreciate it. But so I do, when people are out there talking about it and open about it, I think it's super important for people to know, because it's not, especially where you were at 12, 13, 14 and getting, like, you're essentially growing up around Tony Sirocco. I mean, come on, it's not a normal childhood.
Yeah, for sure.
You know
Even growing up in New York City is just not a normal childhood. It's so crazy.
It's so crazy. So you go through all these. But the reason I bring that up is what point where you're just being a kid, does it get to your head? Is it ego things? Like, I'm on the biggest fucking show. People are kind of kissing my ass a little bit. Like, what happened to where you're just like, no, I'm gonna kick back. I don't give two shits. This is just youth.
Yeah, no. I started smoking and drinking when I was 12. Because when you grow up in the city, it's like you know what. A lot of times when I talk to, because I have brothers who live upstate, and it's like there's such a longer period that you have control of your kids when you live upstate, because it's like, oh, my brother's going over to his friend's house. All right, who's he going to see? His friend, the mom, and the dad. And you're going to pick them up, and they don't have a driver's license. They're 13, they're 14, they're 15. Right. Where are they going to go? Right. Maybe they sneak off in the backyard to smoke a joint. Maybe, you know, like that's like even a little extreme. And when I was 12, you know, my friend would hit me up, come downstairs. You go downstairs, and you're hanging out. I mean, I remember we were 12, 13 years old, and we had homeless guys who would buy us booze. You know, like because we hang out in the park all the time, and there were these other homeless guys in the park, and eventually you start talking to them and you'd be like, yo, we'll buy you beer if you buy us beer. Right. And they would buy us beer, and then we had a whole fucking, you know, and but a lot of times people say, like, you know, you think Sopranos made you, and I was going to be, you know.
Wouldn't have mattered either way.
Yeah, it's in my family. It's just, what I loved that, you know, and I think, and I think a lot of it, you know, when you start to get older, that shit hurts, man.
You cannot, you can't retaliate the same way.
It's like, this shit hurt, you know, and I think what happened was when I was 12, 13, 14, all the way up until whenever, you know, 20, in my early 20s, it was fun. Yeah. Like, I was like, I'm fucking having a blast. Sure. And then I think there was a period where it wasn't fun anymore, but it was all I knew, you know. It was hard for me to change my life, because I was like, well, I only go to these bars and these clubs and these places if I did stop, because I don't want to be in this pain anymore. What do I do? Right. Like, I didn't even understand I didn't know who I would be without my addictions, you know?
Yeah, well, plus your body was used to it. You know, it probably wasn't easy just saying, like, I'm going to stop now. Your body said, what the fuck? I've been doing this for so long now.
For sure, yeah, because I was addicted to painkillers, Xanax, you know, alcohol. I don't like. It's a weird thing with alcohol, because I know what my addiction was to pills. Yeah. Then when I think about alcohol, it's like I think I was just a binge drinker, and this where even when I was at my worst with alcohol, I could always stop. And the other thing was, I always associated alcohol with fun, with a good time. Sure. So it was like, you know, I remember I would be, even at the worst, when I was drinking the most, you'd be at a funeral, and somebody would be like, "Yeah, let's go to a bar." I'd be like, "Are you nuts? Like, what do you mean go to a bar in between the, you know?" Like, I'm like, "You want to drink our friends? You know, somebody's dead." Like, I just never associated, you know, drinking with bad times, which I'm so grateful for, because I know a lot of people who struggle with addiction, that's when they go back. You know, it's like things are off the rails, things are really bad. I'm going to go to that. Right.
You associated it more with fun. And that might be even more damaging because you start relying on it to have fun.
Right. And it's also like the thing of, you know, I grew up idolizing these rock stars and everything. And I remember the first time I was like in a nightclub, I was like, this sucks. And then I remember getting wasted, being like, oh, this is awesome. You know, I was like, so it was kind of like, I mean, now I'm 40, and the fact that I want to be on my couch at 8 p.m., I don't give a fuck. You know, I'll say that right to somebody. Even when I'm dating people, I'm like, I'm not going to bars with you. I'm not going to your girlfriend's birthday at midnight at a bar. Like, it's just not happening. Where when you're, you know, 16, 17, 18, you don't want to be like, oh, I'm uncomfortable at a club, or like, you know, because I was lucky that, well, lucky or not, but like, by the age of 16, 17, I was able to get into all the clubs in New York City. And of course. So it was like, you know, we're hanging out. We're having a good time.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's what I meant, though, too, is yes, you didn't necessarily, as you said, it wasn't because of Sopranos the reason why, but it certainly didn't hurt to be able to say, like, oh, don't worry about that place. I can get us in there.
For sure. Yeah. But for me, it's kind of, I look at it as the opposite, which is, a lot of people are like, do you think it's because Sopranos of your addiction? And I'm like, I think Sopranos was the reason I was able to stop.
Oh, really?
Know? Because, you know, I had so 4 of my friends, just who I brought to the last premiere of Sopranos, have passed away.
Oh, shit, I'm
just
sorry.
the last premiere. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. But, so, and, you know, a lot of those kids, if they were still alive, you know, maybe they're living with their mom, they're miserable. So my point is, with them, it's like the struggle to change their behavior and the addiction, when they look at what's waiting for them on the other side is like, well, what, I fucking live with my mom in the same building I grew up in, and it's just all bad. Where for me, I was like, I had the greatest opportunity in life. My life is gone. I can go on and do these things, and all these doors are open for me, and I'm gonna, keep. So it was. I think it was easier for me when I was deciding, to be done. To
turn it around, yeah. Look, and it also, you probably have a great support system around you too that you probably definitely wouldn't have had you not had this show, because you seem to obviously have a great relationship with Jamie.
Yeah.
And then when it came to it, you said you started drinking at like 12 though. Did it affect your work at all on set, or you never took it with you to set?
Never.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
okay.
That was, so I would. A lot of times when I would drink, because I was doing coke and everything in my late teens, early 20s, doing a lot of coke, like 17, 18. And so if I would go to drink, let's say on a Friday, I'd still be hurting Monday, because I'd probably party Friday, Saturday, maybe into Sunday, and then you sleep, and then Monday you hurt. So my point is, if I had work on a Monday, I wouldn't even drink on a Thursday.
Okay, so you were balanced on it, to where it wasn't totally reckless. It wasn't good for you, but it wasn't totally reckless. You understood, I'm not going to fuck up my opportunities here. I know exactly when to pace this stuff out. I'll work until when I can get fucked up, and then start working on Monday, Tuesday, whenever you had to.
For sure. And it was like, Jim was the leader, and he set an example in a lot of ways of like, because Jim's job was 20 times harder than mine. You know what I mean? It's like when, and again, I'm not trying to say, oh, acting so hard this, but it's just time consuming. When you're the lead on a show and you have to be there from Monday to Friday, all the times they're working, and then as soon as they go, okay, you can go home now, he goes, okay, I have to go learn 8 pages or 12 pages of the next, and that's where it's like there were times he didn't have a second to himself to think outside of Tony and it's tough. So I knew for me, there were a lot of times where I'd work 2 days a week, and it was like, no, this is like, there was so much respect and appreciation on set for everyone that I knew, like, I would never let, because you hear stories of like Lindsay Lohan didn't show up for work, and she's on like, Herbie the Love Bug, so it's like, when you're, on Sopranos, the way we were, it was like, you're not gonna, and especially me, because some of these people had been acting for 30 years, 40 years, and they finally got their big break. I was a fucking 12-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Who was like, everybody gets on the hit show, like, and it was just like, I always felt that and knew, like, I'm not gonna mess this up.
It's also the one cast also that you definitely don't want to mess up around.
Right. And I remember the only time I messed up twice. One time was my 21st birthday, and it was because I came back from Vegas, and I had to work that Tuesday, and I came back Monday, and I just had no voice. Like and I was like throwing up in a garbage can. I was a mess for sure. But I showed up and I could do it. And they were like, we need to just go home. They were like, we would have to shoot this over. You have no voice. Who has
the conversation with you? Was it David?
No, it wasn't even like, because I only had like 1 or 2 lines. It wasn't like a big scene for me. So they were like, we're going to shoot the whole scene, but then your part will have to do another day, because you could barely speak. I was like, I could do it. Like, my voice was gone, and I was oh my God, I went to Vegas for my 21st birthday. I was first time ever in Vegas. It was out of control.
As you should.
Yeah. Right. And then, and they all understood. Like, that was the thing where they were like, you got back in time, you're here, you just can't. You have no voice. And then the other time was we were shooting I think we were shooting in Long Island, and it was like Johnny Sack's daughter's wedding.
Okay.
And there's, hundreds of people, because it's so many extras in this. And somebody came to us at the end of the day and they said, hey, we have a bar down the street. It's yours. You guys can take it over tonight if you want. And we're like, okay. So we go party hard. And because, again, it's like when there's a wedding scene like this, you are just in the background. Like, my job was to sit there. I didn't have a line. But it's like when they pan back, they need to see you sitting there, you know? So you need to sometimes you're sitting there for 12 hours. And you're like, I'm here, but so what, And and I remember we got wasted, and I remember a guy from set, a friend of mine, coming to wake me up. Like, I was like 2 hours late to set. And they were like, yo, you're lucky they haven't turned the camera to the side where they need to see you guys. So like Jamie and Jim and Edie are just sitting around, like, not doing anything, but they're like, and he brought his car to like get me there in like 4 minutes, And we fly in, I get in the outfit and I walk into set and nobody knew I wasn't there.
Oh, really?
So I mean, so Jim lucky. And Edie and
right.
people at the bar from the night before, they knew, but like the director and these people, they had no clue.
That's that. I mean, that again, the youth.
Yeah, it was a 10-year run. I had two bad days,
and I'm sure there were a lot of other bad days from other people as well. Too.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were. But like when it came to when you mentioned with Jim, Jamie, and Edie, like it seemed, because for me, one of the reasons I responded to the show, not only being the idea of the mob stories and that was always the intriguing. They're doing a mob story for HBO, but they're going to focus on the family aspect of it. That's always what everybody says, and he did that times 10. And for me, what I responded to was, I grew up in Queens, and I knew people like that. It all felt like, I remember sitting in my living room of my friend's place, and just family dynamic that just responded in the same way that you guys did. Like, how long did it take for the four of you guys to really like click like that?
I think it had a lot to do with Jim, and I think we clicked right away.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, it was that vibe. It was, and Edie, she didn't have children until far into the show, and the motherly instinct, I remember her coming up to me, licking her, finger and wiping my cheek, and it was just, you felt this family vibe. And it's weird because they did have to go from, I was, maybe Jamie too, but I was the only relationship where they had to kind of go, okay, this is the kid. So then when I was 16, 17, 18 and being around and drinking and hanging out with them and smoking and this, and everybody's outside smoking a cigarette outside a set, and I'm smoking with them. So now they kind of have to transition to go, okay, well, now this kid is becoming a man. And then they're with me when I turned 21, 22, and they're like, okay, well, now he's, I don't know what people want to say, but it's like, he's an adult now, and we have to respond that way. So they really had to like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it was probably weird for them.
Of course it was. I mean, they're absolutely, you are their kind of kid. You are, but you're spending that much time. You're spending probably, I would assume, you correct me if I'm wrong, but you're spending at that point in your life more time with them than you probably are your actual family, unless your family's on set a lot of the times too. I would assume in the beginning they were.
It would depend. I mean, somebody like Jim, definitely, he's spending more time at this place than with his family by far. But, for me, luckily, again, sometimes I'd work 4 days a week, sometimes 2. So it would depend. But yeah, I mean, there's people, when you're the lead on a show, it's like that is your friends, family, everything. Like, there's a lot of people who are the lead on the show who have a full bedroom somewhere located on set where that's where they sleep. And this, because it's like, you can go home, and by the time they drive you home and you get home and you get situated, or it's like you could just go get 3 extra hours of sleep if you sleep here tonight,
Yeah. So I mean, it is like as I mentioned though, it was so real, and as you've gotten it for many times over your career here, how like people just responded to the relationship, the idea of it. And you mentioned with AJ and how eventually it became like annoying or whatever it was too, but what was the plan? Because I'm sure, as you just mentioned, with how you were changing and they see, and how great of a writer David is, and how you mentioned before with Tony Sirocco, and how they would write around certain things that he would do. I am assuming that they took a lot of stuff that were like, well, okay, we're looking at what Robert's doing here now too, and AJ starts to change. So I wonder, was the original idea in David's head always where AJ went, or was there just stuff that he learned as he was kind of spending more time with you?
Yeah, I think he was flexible, and I think there were things like, I would show up in like Pantera shirts and Slipknot shirts, and I was skateboarding, and then I'd be in a Pantera shirt and skateboarding, and this. There definitely were things, but again, like, you don't have to give David anything. Like, they were just, I mean, they're so good. And recently, so at the 25-year anniversary, Edie said it was so easy for me to play Carmela, and Jamie was so blown away by that, because she's like, I watched you and I know that's true, but that's so insane. And it is, because the writing and how long did it take you to click? I mean, we clicked right away and everything. And it was just this weird thing. What David said when he did our podcast was like, everybody was getting struck by lightning. Like, it was this, what people wanted, what do you think made the show successful? It's when everything happens to show up at the perfect time, and it's the writing, and it's the actors, and it's them getting along off set, getting along on set, the acting. It's because, I never rehearsed a scene with anybody once on the show. And I know there's a lot of actors who were like, we never rehearsed. And there were some people who, I think would get together to rehearse some things, but it wasn't really a thing. And even, Edie says, like, her stuff with James, like how they just clicked like that. It was right away. Like there was no need to have to spend all this time together off set and get to know each other and this. It was just, we had the relationship they put on the paper, we were able to have on screen. Yeah. And it's just, again, it's David, all the writers, Terry, the directors, Timmy Van Patten, these guys were so good. And so we had Drea de Matteo on our podcast, and what her and Jamie were talking about was, it was like, I want to say exactly what they said. It was like at a young age, you met the love of your life, and then now you're spending the rest of your life trying to find that again. Right. Because they were saying they can't, I didn't decide to go act after, but they did, and they were like, you can't find it again. And you're always trying. You're always trying to be like, this will be like Sopranos. This will be like Sopranos. Then you do things and you go, oh, wait, no, this is... It's not like, Jim had his trailer and we'd all end up in Jim's trail. Like, there's in LA, it's like they're fighting over who has the biggest trailer. It's like nobody cared who had the biggest trailer. We'd go hang out together and there was never one fight on set about, I should have this, I should have a bigger this, my assistant this. Like nobody would bring people to set. Yeah. Nobody would fool. Again, we were very lucky that everyone was from New York.
You could tell the attitude for sure, and even I remember that as you asked me before if I liked the movie, and I told you I did the rewatch of the series, and the way that I felt about the series when I was watching, it was my favorite show. And then I remember watching back in it was the late '90s, early 2000s when 3 and 4 were coming out, seasons 3 and 4, and it was like this huge break in between. I think it was like two years or something in between one of the seasons. I can't remember which one it was. And I remember at the time going, okay, maybe that season's not as good as the other one. But then I started to think, was that because I haven't seen it in so long, right? Right. And I remember there was, whether it was contract stuff, and it had nothing to do with problems on the set itself between you guys, but it's like, as you were mentioning, all the shit that Jim is doing, that you pay him what he wants to get paid, 100%.
Of course.
But I remembered as I did that rewatch, by the way, it's 100 times different when you're watching it like streaming to where it's like from one huge movie. It all plays just brilliantly, especially because I was one of those people, the ending, I'm like, what the fuck was that? Right. And now after reading so many different theories about it and understanding what it is, I'm like, oh. And still, do you have any fucking clue what happens at the end? Be honest.
No. And again, I think David is a genius, and I think his whole point was this. I think any other show that I've ever, I'm a big TV guy. I love TV. And I don't know any finale I talk about with my friends because I've never watched Sopranos. So I watched all these other shows. Yeah. And there's no shows that after 10 years the show's over and I'm like, man, the finale, blah, 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 and want to sit around and talk about. But Sopranos, people do, and people have such passionate opinions about it. And I'm like, that's great. But I understand people who loved it, and I understand people who didn't.
Yeah, I appreciate it a lot when you go back and rewatch it. But you mentioned clicking, you mentioned the relationships you have with your on-screen family. You mentioned, obviously I got to mention the relationship with Jamie, right? And you're doing your show with her now. You weren't doing, and I mentioned up top, you weren't doing interviews. Then you went on, you did Michael and Steve's show, and did that spark the, hey, I like doing this? Because you're great at it. You and Jamie both do your show. It's a great show. You're very comfortable with each other, obviously. Where did the idea come to say, like, let's do a show together?
So I was a big podcast guy. I love comedy podcasts. I could listen to 8 hours a day.
What's your shows?
I love Your Mom's House, who we're doing our podcast for now, was one of my favorites. I love anything with Bobby Lee. I think Bobby Lee's hilarious.
Bobby's the first guy, one of the first guys. Him and Mike Young were the two guys when I got there that I knew that I met at the Comedy Store when I got there. Bobby was on stage right after Mike Young with nobody in the OR, and I saw Bobby. I don't know, it was like 3 years ago, and I walk up to him. And Santino was another guy that I started. Well, he started after me, but he's a friend of mine. And I was at the Comedy Store, and I see Bobby Lee probably 3 or 4 years ago. He goes, big smile on his face. He goes, "Hey, I thought you died of COVID." I was like, "That's Bobby." So I was like, you're listening to Bobby Lee, Santino, Your Mom's House.
Yeah, I'm listening to. At the time, it was Tiger Belly. It was before. It was before, and I was just like, I love listening to this. I was a Howard Stern guy back in the day, and I'm like, I love listening to this. It seems like they're having so much fun. So this is 2019. I'm living in Vegas for a second time, but I'm sober. And I'm like, I hate this. Why did I do this? Yeah. But I thought, I was like, oh, I would like living in Vegas sober because I play a lot of poker. So I'm like, I would love that. It was awful. So I was like, all right, I got to get out of here. So I reached out to Jamie and another friend I had, this kid, Kasim G, who's a comedian.
Yeah.
And I said, if I move to LA. I thought they would be great together, the three of us. And I said, if I moved to LA, would you guys start a podcast with me? And they said yes. So I moved to LA. We started the podcast, and we did that for like 3 years. And then somewhere in there, Tom Segura and Christina P said, hey, come, we want to have you on our podcast. We did their podcast. And then they said, hey, if you want to come do a podcast for our studio, we'd love it. Unfortunately, Kasim lives in LA. Jamie was in Austin. I moved to Austin. They're in Austin. And yeah, we've been, but yeah, we had our podcast before the Talking Sopranos started. Yeah, but we never had any interest in talking about Sopranos. Okay. You know, we were always like, no, we want to be. I feel like if you pigeonhole yourself into talking about one thing on a podcast, whether it's 50 episodes in, 100, 150, you eventually show up one day and you go, I don't want to talk about this.
I'm sure, absolutely. So a lot of the times, like, I went from doing just stand-up stuff to doing just movie stuff, and movies and TV. That was what I did for a very long time. And like, but I want to be able to do like more stuff like this. I want to be able to do more things like that. And I don't want to just talk about movies. I don't want to just talk about TV. I got a strong interest in fucking what's flying around in the sky with UFOs and stuff too.
Right.
And I talk about that. So I got all these different things that I like talking about. But so I understand that for sure. And I think that that's what's great about, you know, the conversational style. And you mentioned Drea. I had her. She was the first Sopranos cast member I had virtual. I had her on. She was promoting a movie and I had her on. She was great. She was a lot of fun. But dude, you killed me with the. I was dying with the clip with the armpits. The hairy armpits, because she's was the hottest thing on television.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I'm sure, and like, because they mentioned, I was going to ask you this too, and you kind of answered me when I was watching that episode, was that you would assume, because Jamie Lynn is a beautiful woman. And, and so when you would assume as a kid, you're trying, even though your brother on the show, you're probably, let's say, you know, this guy took a shot, but you never took a shot at it.
Never.
Okay.
There was never even one day, you know, we've talked about this before, where like there's photos of me and Jamie when we would go to like the Emmy Awards, and this, we'd be like back in my hotel or her hotel, and we'd be laying on the bed together, and it was always just like, no, this is like my best friend. Like, she's like my sister. And again, I've talked about this too, but it's like, I have two sisters in real life, and maybe there's 50 people in the world who know that that's my sister.
Sure.
You know? Sure. And they go, how's your sister? How's your sister? With Jamie Lynn and Sopranos, there are tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands, millions of people, and maybe tens of thousands who come up to me and go, how's your sister? Where's your sister? How's your sister? Your sister. And always on, you know, on the show. It's like the sister. And I think that's how it feels. Like in my head, it's like she feels like my sister. I've been told in my brain tens of thousands of times that Jamie's my sister, and they're just, you know, we would go out to clubs together until 4 a.m. New York City drinking this, and there was never one night where it was like, oh, well, we kissed, or that. It was always like, and it was also that thing of like, you know, she was the kid girl on the show, and all the guys were so protective of her that I felt the same way. You know, it was always like, no, you got to watch out for Jamie. You know, you got to look out for Jamie. I never thought of like her in a sexual way.
Makes a lot of sense also, because God forbid something did happen, and then it's like, that messes it up, and then that dynamic changes dramatically.
Oh yeah, and I was a drunk, so I would have messed it up right away. Yeah, it would have been good for 4 days, and then she would have been like, "Oh, Rob." Yeah, exactly. So it was good, but yeah, Drea. I mean, you know, Drea would just walk onto set, and you're like, Jesus,
smoke
show. She
Yeah.
was so hot. It was crazy, and she would wear like things where it was like barely there clothing and this, and you know, she was always like a rocker chick and this, and she just never thought of herself in that way of like being hot, being sexy. So it was like this weird thing of like, she's so hot and doesn't even like, you know, she smokes cigarettes and spitting, and then you're like, damn, like, you know, it's crazy.
But it's funny that you mention that, because I'm like, I'm a big, Julia Roberts was my, growing up still, like, I had an opportunity to meet her once barely. So I could talk to anybody, but you know, but that particular thing that always stands out to me was when she was on the carpet the one time, and she had the pits, And you nailed it when it's like there's something about it. It's just like you got to shave the pits.
Yeah, it just reminds me of like it goes from like she's so hot to like bro, like I'm like I don't know.
You can spit on the floor, you can fucking do whatever you want, just shave the pits.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know. There's something about it where I'm like it just completely turns me off. And anybody who doesn't know, we're saying so Drea de Matteo didn't used to shave her armpits back in the day.
Right. That's right. We're going with that. It's just that's so fresh with the clip itself. But
and we would talk about it all the time. We would always.
How old were you when you first were you how she's only probably like 6-7 years older
than me? She might be 10. I don't know.
Even so, still enough. Did you ever have the like before you see the pitch? Did you ever have the courage to say no?
She always had like boyfriends, and they were always like they looked like big Rob Zombies. I'm like I'm not. This is not my thing,
No.
But she was always awesome. She was always great, and she's always so sweet. I spoke to her today. She's
awesome. A sweetheart. It was a pleasure to talk to her too. I wish she was in studio at the time. I was in LA. I can't remember. She may have been here, or she might have been on set. I can't remember where she was. But
are you happy to be back to New York?
I'm very happy to be back to New York because I had a good time in LA, man. It was good. I spent 25 years there, and it was a good time. And I met a lot of good friends. I mean, the majority of the stuff that I did stand up wise was in LA. I met my wife because of stand up comedy. I met some of my best friends because of stand up, and I created my business out there. Couldn't do this right now what I'm doing here had it not been for LA. But for where we are right now, you and I sitting here, like this part of town, this area, better for my kids growing up.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you about AG1. You guys know AG1. I mean, if you've been listening to this show long enough, you know that I love AG1. And people keep asking me. They notice. John even said when I started, new look, 20 pounds I lost. One of those reasons, AG1 became part of my routine. Because for a long time, I wasn't paying attention to what was going on in my body. It just wasn't. For me, I read labels. I verify that everything is up to the quality I need. And that is why I've stayed with AG1 for as long as I have. It is a research-backed foundational nutrition supplement. And it delivers daily nutrients, gut health support, and is backed by multiple research studies so you can trust what you're putting into your body. Because I like coffee. I used to drink so much coffee to keep up, but I don't need it anymore, not as much. Because after drinking AG1, I have realized that I have all this energy and I need less coffee to power my day. It turns out I'm not alone. Because in a research study, 91% of people noticed they needed less coffee after 60 days of drinking AG1. 97% of people in a research study felt more energy after 30 days of drinking AG1. That's crazy. 91% of participants noticed that they need less coffee after 60 days of drinking AG1. That's me. Energy is a majorly important reason why it comes to I need so much energy for parenting. I can tell you that right now. AG1 contains ingredients to sustain energy so you can be the best version of yourself within each day. And it really has worked for me, and it's helped me on the plane, everything. It's easy, it's satisfying to start your journey with AG1. If you go to AG1 and you can get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. You got to go to drinkag1.com/bigthing. drinkag1.com/bigthing. It's the one product I trust to support my whole body health. It's AG1.
Joy Mode. Now, I've been telling you about Joy Mode forever. And Joy Mode, and people, when they hear about Joy Mode right away, you go, well, I don't need that kind of stuff. I'm in the prime of my youth. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with the prime of your youth. You want to tell Roka, say, I don't need that just yet. I'm like, we ain't talking about like you can't make it work. It's talking about when you go to the gym, what do? You take a supplement, you go, whoa, that helped me out. It's like energy. Well, you're feeling good because what you don't want to do is you don't want to go on the freaking, a lot of people go to those gas station lines and they look over those cheap pills and they think that's going to work. Yeah, they don't. And they hurt you. You wake up, you feel like crap. I've taken one of these things before and you're like, oh, not particularly those, but other ones where you feel like a hangover. And you don't want that. This is like a booster. It is an absolute booster. And it's the shit right now. It's really good. I'm not gonna lie to you. Let me tell you, it's really good. And people were saying, do you like this stuff? How do you feel? I feel like, as Jesse Ventura said, goddamn sexual tyrannosaurus. I'll tell you that. It is no joke. I love Joy Mode. And people have been,
excited about Joy Mode and keep using it. And all you got to do, you want to get 20% off. You go to usejoymode.com. You get 20% off. You got to use that code Big Thing. I mean, how appropriate is that? You go to usejoymode.com, 20% off. And use your Big Thing, or use Big Thing code. Even better. So there you go. That's all I got to say about that.
You're still in Austin now? Or?
Yeah, I'm in Austin now.
So are you here just to promoting the 25 years?
No, so yeah, we flew in. HBO flew us in to do the. There was a 25-year anniversary thing at the Tribeca Film Festival.
Oh, sweet.
And then they were going to show us 2 episodes of The Sopranos, and it was fun. It's funny how like stuff works with The Sopranos, where it's like, it's almost like, you know, not that things in the script or anything, but whenever something would come up in Sopranos, where you're like, that's gonna happen. Okay. Then by the day it was coming, it was like, no, that's not happening anymore. Like somehow they just always know. And my point is, they were like, at this, you know, 25th anniversary, we're gonna show you 2 random episodes of Sopranos, and that's what they were gonna do in a theater. And I was like, okay, like I don't really want to sit through 2 episodes of Sopranos, and like nobody really, like, you know, from the show like really does. It's like 2 hours, and you're like, okay, whatever. Like, you know, most people have seen it already and whatever. And then like a few days before, they're like, no, HBO gave us permission to show the David Chase documentary instead. That's what they showed. Okay. And it was so good, and it was so different, and it brought. So what people don't know, I'll share this little, you know, I don't know what they call it, not an Easter egg, but like a little tidbit. I don't know what I'm supposed to say, but guess what? I don't work for HBO anymore. I love HBO, but I don't. And so they show in the documentary, they show auditions.
Oh, do they really?
It's so good.
Who do they show?
It's so I know they show like Tony Sirocco reading for Tony Soprano.
Oh, really?
They show Stevie Van Zandt, I think, reading for Tony Soprano. I think they show like Artie Bucco. Again, it's been over a month ago since I saw it, so I don't want to say who they show if I'm wrong. But it was just watching that. To me, it's so much better than watching like clips of the show or whatever. You just see this. Yeah. And then I think it was, I don't know if it's Jim. I think it was Tony Sirocco when he's auditioning. He's auditioning, and all of a sudden he's like, that sucked, you know. And he's like, I let me do it over. If you want me to do it over, I'll do it over. You know, he's just, and you're just watching this, and you're like, God, it's so good to see these people being them and not the characters. And it was, it's a really good documentary.
I can't wait to see it, man. I'm excited to hear about it in general, because that show just meant a lot to me. Well, I'm just watching it with my dad and friends in general. I was talking, it was the other day. My friend Mark, who's a massive Sopranos fan, he was talking about Yellowstone, and we were talking about Kevin Costner just had his new movie come out. And we were talking about how, you know, the stuff that was going on set with Kevin Costner. But he told me, because I haven't seen all Yellowstone, I don't know if you have, but he said to me, he's like, Yellowstone is the closest that they've gotten to Sopranos with that family dynamic of that kind of alpha male doing this thing. And like I can't say if I agree or I disagree.
Right.
But it is that show that is consistently referenced. It's The Sopranos meets this. It's The Sopranos meets that.
Right.
Always. What if Tony Soprano wore this? You know what I'm saying? It's like that type of thing. So it's like it's a special thing to be a part of, man. It really, really is.
Well, I forget. I think Drea is the one who, she was like, people don't realize why people, you know, still care about us, or when they see us, they give us a hug instead of just pointing at us or whatever. And it's because they watched us in their beds. You know, we were in their home with them. We're somebody like a George Clooney. It's like you go to a movie theater, you're eating popcorn, sitting with hundreds of other people watching him, and it feels like this bigger than life thing. Where other people like, you know, Tony Soprano, you were sitting in your living room. He was in your living room with you every Sunday.
Sometimes that was good. Sometimes that scared the shit out of you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, look, being on set, you know, being AJ in scenes with Tony, same thing. Sometimes you're giving him a big hug and then other times you're like, fuck, this is...
Which reminds me, sorry to cut you off, but you said, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because you brought up that scene with David Chase on your podcast. You thought the best acting that you did was outside the police station.
Well, I thought the only good scene I ever did in Sopranos. That's what I said. I don't want to be like the best acting I ever did. I only liked once after doing all the scenes in Sopranos. There was only one where after we did it, I felt good, and I was like, I think that was good. And it was the scene outside of the police station.
It was a phenomenal scene. And after I watched that interview again, I went back and watched the scene again, and it was so good. And you watch it because, as I mentioned, with having kids and looking at these moments, and how you had said that at the end there, where he just kind of, it wasn't supposed to go that particular way, and now Jim just kind of went on his instincts. And I think that's also because his dad, and he was able to, like, that scene. Like, what was it about that in general to where, I guess that's probably the comfortability of being with Jim also.
Yeah, but there were so many scenes with Jim, and there was just something about that scene where, like, you know, it was nighttime. It was just, and there was something also about, you know, sometimes when you do a scene, you feel like the camera's in your face, and it'll be a lot. You're conscious of, like, okay, don't look into the camera and don't see that. And I don't know if it was because it was night, and I don't know what. It felt like it was just me and Jim there, and we were doing this thing, and it was just. Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea what it was about that scene, but there was some reason. I remember, like, calling my manager after doing that scene and being like, I think I just, like, acted for the first time. Like, I think that was, I was like, I think that was good, you know? And I was really happy with that and proud. And I'm so grateful that it was with Jim, and, you know, it was great. Yeah.
I think it was a great scene, but I also think you're tough on yourself, because I think you had a lot of phenomenal scenes. And I think that another one that is tough to watch, but it is the pool scene, man.
Yeah.
That, when AJ tries to kill himself, like, and I'm sure you've been asked this a million times over, and I apologize to asking, but I got you in studio. I got to know.
Yeah.
You think that, like, was he really trying to do it, or is he just calling out for help?
I haven't been asked that a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Did he want to just be seen? Did he want to be, you know? I don't know. It's tough.
How did you play it? When you played it, did you think that you were like he was going for it?
Yeah. I did it like like he's gonna kill. You know, because there are maybe ways that it wouldn't. Because and a lot, again, it's like when we did that scene in the parking lot of the police station. It's like it's just me and Jim in a parking lot. There's no way to kind of set the how do you feel in this. And when we did the suicide scene, I remember, like, the director was playing this, like, sad music on set, and I remember, like, it's December in Jersey, and it's whatever it was, 20 degrees, and you're about to jump into this pool for the 20th time, and you put a brick on your foot, and you put a bag on your head, and you tie it around this. So it's like, it's way easier to get into that, you know, because it's like, this is fucking crazy. Like, this is bizarre. And then you would jump in, and then you'd have to you lay on the cement and it's freezing, and then they have to dry you, and you're doing it again 15 minutes later as soon as you're dry. So that was fucking brutal. And you're like, so when it's like, man, you look so sad there, I'm like, yeah, it sucked, you know? Like, it was a whack situation where, like, you know, something like it's just two people standing in the parking lot, and it's like, now you gotta cry and this and that. It's way, you know.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but I also think, even though you're putting in that situation, it takes it takes the right person to be able to pull even the emotions, set you in the mood 100%, but you got to be able to really get there. And that scene, man, is like it's so powerful. Even when the pain in Jim's voice is, "What's wrong with you?" But then he calls you baby, and he's hugging you, and it's like, and because of the power that he's bringing in there too, I can only imagine that to you break down, and it's like this whole thing, and it's like, so I think that scene alone was phenomenal. Acting.
Thanks. Yeah, and I also think it's like, you know, these characters so well by that point. I mean, that we'd been doing it for 9 years or something like that. But by that point, and, like, you know how much people love these characters, and you know the relationship between AJ and Tony, and that when you're doing it, you feel the sadness. Right. You know, you can feel the sadness for AJ. You feel the sadness for Tony. You feel the sadness for all of them. You feel the sadness for now. Tony has to go tell everybody my son just tried to kill himself. This whole thing, like, it's you feel it. You know, you feel. You know, like, part of me is like, yeah, I have to act in the scene, and another part I do realize, like, man, AJ just tried to kill himself. Right. You know.
Yeah, it's great for people. By the way, if you haven't seen The Sopranos,
they're probably gone by now.
But if you haven't, you should really check it out. Or if you haven't rewatched it, go back and rewatch it. But I want to jump back to. I'm bouncing back and forth. I want to get back to the podcast, because the chemistry that you guys have, the interviews that you guys are doing. What's the overall goal for it? You know, you want to just keep doing it just so you can keep hanging out with Jamie, keep doing your thing, and because you're officially retired from acting, any chance you come back?
I actually just did my first acting thing in a long time, because so Tom Segura, who we do our podcast for, I don't know how much I could talk about, but he, wanted to do something, and he's like, hey, could you do me a favor and act in this thing? And I did that for him, and now the show got picked up and whatever, so I don't know, I might do 2 or 3 episodes of that, but that was just, it's just something that's fun and whatever. But
did you catch the bug again?
No, I hate it. Yeah, I you know what I really hate is memorizing lines.
Yeah, I don't blame
I really, because it's like for me to do it, I have to lock myself in like a bathroom and just sit and read and then to write it and read it and write it and read it and just trying to get that in my head because, you know, as you should, I put a lot of pressure on myself to make sure you know every word and you're not fucking up. And sometimes you have 100 people standing around, and when you don't know, you know, when you're messing up a line and these people want to go home or the lunch or whatever. So I put a lot of pressure on myself for that. And then, I don't know. I just don't. I get something like podcasting where I know the feeling of how much I enjoy it.
Yeah.
To then when I go do acting and I'm like, I just don't enjoy this.
I feel the same. It's why I love stand up so much, because I rely on myself, and I could do it when I'm working on doing my, like you say, you're not letting anyone down when if you fuck up a joke.
Exactly.
You wrote it yourself. You're doing the thing. You're kind of navigating the energy, and you're doing that. You mentioned Tom. Obviously, working with Tom Segura. I went to college with Bert.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, and
Florida.
Florida State.
Yeah.
He tells a story about me often on his shows, and sometimes he'll fuck up my name still after 20 years. But we were at a show at Pop Ellis. It was his first show ever, and I had been doing stand up for, I don't know, a month, 2 months.
Yeah.
And I'm already a fucking pro. And he was drinking. And I said to him, I go, look, I'm gonna be drinking after the show too. But I recommend you probably don't want to drink now. And he goes, why? And I said, because you take one drink, you're gonna rely on it every time you do a set. And it's so funny. He tells that story all the time on his podcast too,
right.
Because it's one of those, because I bring that up because of all the story of what you just said, you know, with your entire story about how you got to focus in on it, make the work count, and in general, if it's just relying on your ability to say, okay, I'm going to put forward what I want to do, and I think that's why stand up is, to me, that I rely. That was my addiction for a very long time.
Oh wow.
Yeah, stand up, because it's like that kind of Glenn Close relationship I had with her. You know, it's like the fights were fucking horrible, but the sex was amazing.
Right.
You know, it's like that was stand up comedy for me for a very long time.
And you met your wife doing that how?
She was Glenn Close. No, she was she was in the audience of one of my shows, and she knew one of my friends is a comedian. Some girl he was dating brought her, and she was in the audience, and we just kind of started talking, but it's a much longer story, but it wound up like just that was the initial meeting, and then she came to another show, and then we wound up just kind of going out. But the fucking stupid story is, and we've told this, I was in Vegas, and I hadn't talked to her in a month. I had her on my phone, and I was hammered, and I'm on my phone, and I see this girl dancing across the, and I go, oh, I think it's that girl. And I go, you in Vegas? ? No response. Right? I'm like, forget it. Hammered on the plane on the way back the next morning, looking. I see a text, and it goes. And I go, who's Sadie? Totally different girl I was trying to hit back. And she goes, and she's like, I'm not in Vegas. I'm still in L.A. What do you want? And I'm like, want to go out next month? And she's like, or next week? And she's like, yeah. So I wound up going out with her. And then that was it. I started dating her, and then, you know, here we are 17 years later.
Wow.
Married. So it was like, it was pretty, there's a Vegas story for you.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that's how that happened. But anyway, back to you.
Yeah. Well, like to what you said, like I have no goals for the pod. I do, like, you know, we talk about nonsense, we have fun, and that's the thing. It's like, you know, the first thing, so a few different people came to us when we were first starting in 2019 to do a podcast for them. And Jamie had been doing another podcast at the time where she was contractually obligated not to do a podcast for anyone else. So we were like, you know, we'll do it on our own for 3 years. Oh, sorry, we'll do it on our own for a year until your contract expires. Then when that expired, we were like, we love doing this on our own, because it's like, if Jamie can't show up one day, if Kasim can't show up, if I can't show up, it's all good. We'll figure it out. If we have to do it over Zoom, it's all good. It's for, who are we? Like you said, who am I letting down?
Right.
You know, nobody's whatever. And our fans, or the listeners, were super supportive. Like, you know, they were great. And then we've been doing the one for Tom and Christina now. I think it's just coming up on a year. And when they said, like, we want you to do a podcast for us, I remember the first thing I said was like, I just want to have fun. And they were like, we can do that.
That's
you know,
great.
and they have. They put all their producers behind us, their social media team. They're like incredible. They're so great. And like, you know, Tom and Christina have never said to us, have this person on, don't have them on. You know, there's like, when ads come along, if we say like, we don't want to read that, they go, okay. Like, you know, there's nothing that they've given us any sort of pushback, pressure, and said, hey, no, do this. They just, it's just so great working for comedians where it's like, they want to have fun and they want you to have fun and everyone's kind of having fun. And
you know what it is too? I think, Robert, more than just the comedian side of it too, is that, because I've worked for people, and I'm sure you work for people too, that just don't understand how when you're working with people, if they're happy, it just flourishes things more. It's when I'm more comfortable saying it now. I worked for Joel Silver for a while, and that company was not like that. There were some people who were, but Joel necessarily was not. Like, I remember there was a thing that we did for I can't remember which premiere it was, but I couldn't remember. Like, people were working really fucking hard. And it was like, okay, people got premiere tickets, but they didn't. But none of the employees got the party tickets. And it was like the one thing. And it's like, why? Because you wanted to give it to celebrity friends or wanted to give it to someone else too. And these are people who were working on the movie. And people, and the company, I didn't really care. I was an assistant at the time. I was like, okay, I don't get in. But I was working really hard, and it was just like, couldn't give a shit about the people who are underneath. And it's like, if you care about people in general who you're working with, whether they're this level together, the way you just talk about Tom and the way you just talk about it, it's like, this is someone who you want to work with because they want you to have fun, you want to have fun, and that helps your business. I see your clips all of the time because of his social team, the way he's working, and that makes you want to do it because you can go in there and you just have a good time. You're talking and you don't feel like this guy's fucking pressuring me to do this. So I think it's very important.
Yeah, and it's the same way, you know, James Gandolfini was the top for us. It's like, you watch Tom and Christina, Bert, and these people and what they're doing, and they're having fun in this, and you're like, I want to have fun. You know, you wanna be part of the gang, the party. It's fun. You're hanging out. You know, and it's just so. Yeah, I love it. You know,
stand up something you'd want to do?
No,
never even try it.
No,
you got timing.
Thank you.
I've seen the clips.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I'm just not. You know, I'm not into it. I don't like. You know, I think like. There's this weird thing of when people say, like, you know, why do you think at 22 you were able to walk away from acting where, like, other child actors get depressed when they don't get work or whatever? And I was like, well, when I was 6 years old, a guy came up to me on the street and said to my dad, hey, he should be an actor. So it wasn't me telling my mom and dad. You know, I wasn't doing fucking song and dance in the living room and saying, I want to be an actor. I want to do this. I want to be. So I never wanted to be on stage. You know, I never. Like, when we just did the 25th anniversary, we all came out on stage and everybody's clapping for it, and I'm like, oh, I feel gross. You know, I don't like that. I love looking to my left and my right and seeing Jamie and my friends and family and everybody from the Sopranos. So it's like, okay, I accept that because it came with this, and that's incredible. But I don't, I don't like people telling me, you know, you did a great job, or I don't like the clapping. I don't like people. It makes me all uncomfortable.
But it's different when it comes to podcasting, though, isn't it? Like, because if someone, I love your podcast, because you're having a conversation. You seem to really like having. I mean, even just talking to you now for the last hour, it's like you just like to talk to people.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and I love hanging, and I love when people, you know, and it's, you know, because sometimes you do podcasts or interviews where it doesn't feel like a real conversation, right. And that you go, why am I here? Because, you know, it shifts you out of that thing where, like, with me and Jamie and we're just hanging out, sometimes they're like, all right, you got to wrap the podcast. I'm like, oh yeah, we're doing a fucking podcast. Like,
you got to be careful there sometimes too, though.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. But it's just like, yeah, it's like you're sitting, you're having fun, you're having a conversation, you're laughing with your friends. And I, you know, for the people who do appreciate my podcast, I know what it's like to appreciate a podcast. Yeah. You know, I know what it's like to listen to Tom and Christina every week for years and Bobby Lee and laugh with them and know how much it means to you. Yeah. You know, so I just I never feel any pressure from a podcast because it's just me talking, being honest, and it's very easy to go, if people don't like who I am, that's cool. Like, I get it. You know, I think that's the other thing too. It's like when you're doing acting or when you're doing stand up, it's like you want people to like this. You know, you're like, I want people to. Where for me, it's like I'm sitting and talking to Jamie exactly how I would talk to Jamie at her kitchen island when we're at her house and we're laughing, and we wanted to be like, let's put this out and see if people enjoy this.
Yeah, the way, so for a little while, I was like, I don't know if you're familiar with like The Mandalorian and Battlestar Galactica, but like, so I produced Katie Sackhoff's show for a while, and we were, one of the main things I wanted to make sure that she did, because she had on like Bryce Dallas Howard and she had on Michael Rosenbaum, and one of the things that we wanted to do was make it seem like the audience was just sitting in a coffee shop, just listening to them to talk, and not to be aware that their microphone's in front of them, anything else too, and just kind of go back and forth. It's where, like, you know, you mentioned as far as with acting, you're preparing for this, or stand up, you're preparing for this. For me, what I do, even like today, I wanted to make sure, like, because fan of the show, fan of you for a long time, and I was like, okay, I want to make sure that if there's anything that I'm missing that I don't know about this guy, I want to be able to talk to him about it. Certain things, I'd like to do the research on it, but that's also because that gives me more of stuff like, oh, that'd be fun to talk about too,
course,
because that's a conversation where, and you can see though too, like even watching your podcast, I'm like, oh, I know, because I've been doing this long enough. I'm like, this is going to be an easy conversation. This guy likes to talk. Same with me. I just can bullshit, and we could do this for a bit.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And you forget. You're like, oh yeah, there's like there should be some kind of structure here. I guess.
Right,
Like, you know, you're like, oh yeah, there has to be. But it is, because sometimes we have people on the podcast who we don't know, and you're like, oh, how is this going to go? Where it's like, I love having our friends on, because then it's like, you don't have to worry at all. Like, I don't have to do the research if I want, if I do, you know, It's just like you
just get to vibe and riff. And I love those shows too, but I will say there's something fun about the idea of going into the unknown. Like today, I mean, I can guess that I think that we're going to have a good conversation. I was right. But I can also, I like the idea of like, I don't know this person. I want to know this person. I want to learn. So now, you know, I'm in Austin. I see, hey, Rob, remember the conversation we had? How you doing? How's everything going? How's the podcast going? We have shit to talk about.
Of course, yeah.
That to me is why I like doing this, because it's one of the things I respond to. For Fandango, I used to have to go to these junkets, and they'd be like, oh, you get 3 minutes with this person. I'm like, what the fuck am I going to talk to somebody for 3 minutes? I'm like, 3 minutes to get one question, or if I got 6 minutes, one of the reasons I couldn't do it anymore, because they'd be like, all right, here are the questions we want you to ask. I'm like, oh, because a lot of times these people sit in the room and they go, yeah, oh, interesting, definitely, and they're not listening. They're just thinking about the next question that's on the card, and it's like, that's why long form it's the shit.
Yeah,
really.
And it's like, and it's also like, you know, the questions that they ask in those things are never the interesting stuff. It's the stuff that comes after those questions, you know. So it's like, how do you prepare for the role? It's like, who gives a shit? Like, of course, people care, but like, really, what the interesting question will be when you have an hour to talk is the fourth question after that.
Right.
Of, you know, when somebody tells you about how they prepared for the role. Oh, why'd you do that? Oh, this, oh, that. Oh, it's because your mom and your dad were like, oh, well, tell us about your mom and your dad and growing up. And then you're really fucking talking, you know?
Yeah. And that's to me, that's what's interesting. But before I let you go here too, I wanted to ask you, as you mentioned you're a big TV and kind of movies guy, right? So that's the basis of what we do on this channel. What's your genre? What are some of your favorites? What are you watching right now on TV? Let's start with that.
What am I watching right now? I mean, you know, scripted.
Yeah.
I watched season 3 of The Bear.
So I love The Bear, but I'm about 4 episodes into season 3.
Okay, I loved season 1 and 2. Season 3 is I didn't love it as much, but the highs were very high.
Okay, a little more artsy. Is that what it is this season?
It was a little artsy. Like, you know, the first episode was very artsy, and I just wasn't really into it. But there were other things later. Like, you know, there's one episode that I didn't like, but then there's one episode where like it totally. I was like, wow, that was fucking great. I don't want to ruin anything, but the the scripted. But this is a little different, but I watched this documentary like last week on Netflix. Tell Them You Love Me. Did you see that?
No, which one's that?
I mean, this is the kind of and I'm sure you do too as a podcaster, where it's like where you watch something and then you could talk about that forever.
100%. Like you could do like 2 hours on it, 3 hours.
Easily. On it. Yeah, easily. And every person who you switch in that chair is going to have a different opinion.
Right.
And basically, what it is there's a guy who and I'm sorry if I got this wrong. I don't know if it's Down syndrome or cerebral palsy or what he has. And there's this thing called assisted or facilitated communication or assisted communication, where these people who are nonverbal, somebody can help them and guide them on like a keyboard, and then they could speak. You know, like Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, sure.
And so there's a professor. So the person with whatever he has, I'm sorry, Down syndrome. His brother is like a really smart guy in college. I think it was Newark or whatever. And one of his professors starts talking about this. She's a woman. And again, I might be getting some of these details wrong, but I'm just trying to tell the story quick. And she does a kind of bit on the facilitated communication. And he goes, oh my God, my brother has that. I would love to see if you could maybe help him or whatever. And she goes, I could try it.
Yeah.
And she starts working with the brother, and all this, the brother who never said a word in his life. I don't know. He's 20, 21, 22. He is fully communicating now through this woman to the family, and they're having this. I mean, it's just crazy, and you're like, oh my God, this is so nuts. And then they're doing this for years, and they build this relationship, and the family's like, it's amazing. This, and then one day she sits down with the family, and she goes, we need to tell you something, but we've taken our relationship to the next step, and we're together.
What the?
And this woman is, I don't know how old. She's a professor in a college. She's married with children.
Sorry. So wait. So how many parts of how many parts is this one? Just
it's one thing. It's 2 hours long.
Okay.
And this guy, I mean, again, you don't want to be rude, and I don't want to make fun of somebody, but he's in bad shape. You know, like they walked him into the court because this went to court after and everything.
Oh shit.
And they walk him into the courtroom, and instantly people are like gasping because they're like, oh my God, this woman, like, because some people believe that this woman raped this kid, and then other people go, no, they were communicating through this thing, and he's in love with her, and he has this beautiful mind. Wow. It's something that there hasn't been something in this long where, like, every dinner I have now, I'm like, have you seen? Like,
it's fascinating.
It's so interesting.
What do they determine?
Well, what happens is there's this professor who comes along and goes, when someone's doing facilitated communication with somebody, you show them both a picture of a cat, and the person types out cat. But if you show the person who has the cerebral palsy or whatever a picture of a cat, and then you show the facilitator a picture of a dog, it types out dog. So they're saying that they think this. There are professors who think this whole facilitated communication thing is bullshit.
Wow.
But then there's questions there's things that this the professor, the woman who was sleeping with this guy eventually, that she knew about him, that there's no way to know if she wasn't doing the communication. Like, she said to him, what do you want us to call you? Like, your family named you whatever, Dimitri. And she goes, what do you want us to call you? And he goes, D-Man. And then his mom goes, oh my God, that's what his favorite counselor in camp called him, D-Man. So that was like, he knew he wanted that nickname, and that he did book reports of books that she didn't read, but he read. Wow. And you're like, wait, I don't, like, at the end, you're just like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I get so worked up.
I'm sure. No, it's great. It's
just like, you watch it and like, I don't know, because you're like, if this woman is actually doing this, and because the other thing is, again, I don't want to go against the family and what they decided, but then you go, because the family, once she said we're having sexual relations, they went on the board of this whole thing is bullshit.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, then why were you letting him go for years to this woman and do this communication if you thought it was bullshit? But again, and the other thing is, with this woman, she seems like an emotionally intelligent person. She's a professor, so obviously they had to do a lot of background research on her, and they know she has a clean, and when she has a clean history, and when she's talking, she seems like a very normal person.
Yeah, but that can be deceiving though too.
Oh, completely. And that's why you're sitting there and you're like, I don't, are these, like, I kind of land on like 90% you feel horrible. You feel horrible for this family either way, but like 90% that this family was very much so, taken advantage of, and this is a horrible thing. But then there's 10% where it's like, maybe this woman is just so kind, and she fell in love with this guy's heart, and this is really all inside of this guy, and we don't, and they should be together, and they, because here's the thing, and again, who fucking knows? Yeah. If I had a brother who had cerebral palsy or whatever it is, and he was in this condition, and a woman came along and was like, I want to move in with him, I love him, and we're lovers, and this, I'm like, it seems kind of great for him, right? Like, I'd be like, this guy's killing it. Like, it's unreal. Like, I don't know. So you're just sitting there and you're going, I don't know what to. It's a phenomenal documentary.
He probably got. If he took a shot, maybe he would have gotten Drea if he had the thing. But either way, dude, listen, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So it's the obviously 25th year, which is insane to say. 25-year anniversary.
It's 27 since we filmed the pilot. 27 years since we filmed the pilot,
Wow. All right. So, again, it's really crazy. And then the podcast, Not Today, Pal.
Yeah, Not Today, Pal.
And you can find that where?
Everywhere. Wherever you get podcasts, and then we do the video version on YouTube. And it's on you could just look up Not Today Pal, but also it's part of the Your Mom's House network, so it's under their whole umbrella of stuff, and yeah.
Well, there you go. So I told you we had Robert Iler, and I was excited to have him on the show. And make sure not only do you check out Robert's show, hit the subscribe button here. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on all that. Put your comments in there, everything. So thanks for joining us here once again. For Robert Iler and me, you're you. We'll see you later.